Thank you all for joining us this afternoon or morning, depending on your time zone. My name is Marta Klepotowska, and I'm the Programs and Communications Manager at ASHB, the Association for Smarter Homes and Buildings. For those who may be new to ASHB, we're a non-for-profit international industry association that's been promoting advanced technologies and in homes and buildings since 1998. On the screen, you'll see the board or the representatives that are on the ASHB Board of Directors, and we are very grateful, very appreciative for all that they do for the association and all the time they take out to assist with all the different committees and groups to make ASHB what it is today, and of course to make it even better in the future. Today's think tank is focused on the future of services and smart buildings, a topic that continues to evolve as digital technologies, user expectations, and business models shift across the built environment. This session today is being recorded, and we will share both the recording and the presentation slides with everyone who's registered and for those who are here attending. You're welcome to participate however you like, whether that means joining the discussion or simply listening in. These think tanks are meant to be interactive, so we encourage your questions, your comments, and your real-world experiences throughout. Feel free to unmute yourself at any point to join the discussion. With that, I'll pass it over to Harry Pascarella from Harbor Research, who will be moderating today's conversation.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you, Greg and the ASHB team, and thanks everybody for joining. As Marta said, please do feel free to jump in and ask questions or provide some examples and experiences. If you're just listening in or between contributions, please keep your microphone on mute so we can minimize any background noises and distractions. I'll start with a quick overview of Harbor Research. For those who don't know who we are, Harbor is a research and strategy consulting firm focused on developing new growth strategies for our clients around emerging technologies. We've been doing this for over 40 years now, and all of our work is really focused at the intersection of digital and physical systems. That has been called IoT for quite a while. It was M2M and pervasive internet before that. And of course, now getting into artificial intelligence and other sorts of software solutions, we are digging in and understanding how those innovations are impacting the physical world. We have quite a long history at this point with ASHB. We've been working together pretty consistently for the past 8 years, and lead the annual projects that ASHB does for both smart buildings and smart homes around understanding technology trends, adoption, and customer needs in the space. And if you're interested in learning more about those projects, you can follow the QR code on each slide here, or reach out to myself or Marta following the session today. Quick overview. So we'll start with a quick overview of trends and forces driving investment in services. We'll look at the evolution and digitization of services. One of the topics we covered in last year's landmark research for ASHB was the idea of building as a service. And while it's somewhat of a futuristic idea, it's interesting to think about the evolution and roadmap towards what might become a model for smart and digital services in the future, where we're at today, what companies are doing to achieve that, and so on. And so we'll try and talk through the full, I guess, roadmap or life cycle of services that we're seeing, from just more basic aftermarket services through life cycle services, the addition of digitization, and then as well this kind of this future evolution towards more as a service kind of business models here. We will save some time at the end for questions and discussion, and so there will be space regardless, but we hope that folks will participate along the way. Feel free to type questions in the chat if you don't want to ask them directly, and we can circle that back to them at the end. Otherwise, I will try and at least stop at the end of each section in case there are points that folks want to add or questions that you all want to ask. I guess I would just say for my own benefit, I don't need to be the only one answering questions as well. If others have some inputs or opinions based on a question that another participant asks, please feel free to chime in. All right, let's get started. So many trends and forces. We're trying to look at these relatively at a high level. I don't think any of this should be new to anybody. But there's a lot of macro trends and forces that are impacting the buildings market and really driving this greater need for customer support. What we're seeing is that the facility manager role and their related staff is changing. You know, there's folks are retiring. In some cases, or more cases, we're seeing staffing shortages than overstaffing, and these folks have more responsibilities and tighter budgets overall. At the same time, these building systems are becoming more complex, you know, both driven by a mix of new and old systems. And you know, in many cases, those new systems are quite sophisticated as well. We are seeing much more data and software being integrated into these systems and used, in overall just increasing the complexity. And so this is just driving that need for more support. The In our survey last year, so each year for ASHB, we field a survey of over 300 building owners and operators, and wanted to put some of this into context, maybe at a more operational or goal or objective level. So while those folks need more support, customers need more support, some of the things that they care about the most are things like improving operational efficiency and reducing costs, sustainability and energy efficiency, improving occupant experience, improving facility and system resiliency and reliability. So, you know, these are their goals. If you look at this is on the left side of this slide. In the middle is we ask specifically about what technologies or what's driving them to adopt new technology specifically, thinking that there may be some differences between priorities and what are the drivers of smart technology adoption. And so number one is energy efficiency for smart technology adoption versus number two is operational costs, kind of a flip of what we see over here when asked specifically about priorities. You got safety and security, resiliency again, health, comfort, and productivity. So, you know, customers are looking to technologies to help them solve some of these problems that they're facing or help them achieve certain operational goals and priorities. But again, I think there's always more that can be done, and you know, thinking about this beyond just a set of technologies and really thinking about how those technologies are delivered to customers, how solutions and services are provided to those customers to not only help them leverage these technologies, but help them get the value out of those technologies that they promise. And that's the kind of scope of what we'll talk about today. On the supply side, there's a number of trends and forces that are driving investment in OEM and aftermarket services kind of beyond what we just talked about. So I think many suppliers are seeing the gap in the market or the need in the market for more close, direct support of customers, you know, especially in the use of, but beyond the use of these key technologies. There's a huge revenue opportunity from services beyond the initial sale of a piece of equipment or system. We've estimated that as much as 5 to 10x that initial you know, sale price of the equipment. obviously services margins are quite a bit better than product margins. This BCG study estimated it's about 2x margin from services than margin from standard equipment sales. I don't think anybody would argue with that necessarily. McKinsey did a good study in 2024 showing there was a double the growth in shareholder returns of companies that had a greater focus on aftermarket services than companies that didn't. And 94% of OEMs predict growth in aftermarket services this year. So, a lot going on from a services standpoint. Is any of this necessarily digital or smart buildings related? Not necessarily, but it's clear that this is a huge opportunity. Suppliers are investing in it. And increasingly, there will be opportunities for companies to innovate, disrupt, experiment around different business models, different ways of providing these services, and so on. So we'll take a breath there. Any thoughts, questions, reactions? Hopefully, this all makes sense to folks. Okay. Hopefully, that's a good context setter. So let's talk about services. So starting from kind of the most basic set of services, what we've seen is this evolution in the marketplace from much more reactive and transactional services. The most direct being break fix and maintenance and support, customer support around some of that. We're seeing an evolution from that to more prescriptive and collaborative lifecycle support and optimization solutions, where a supplier is, helping a customer through the entire lifecycle of a system or piece of equipment, helping them optimize the use of that system in their environment, and helping them achieve whatever their goals might be, whether that be energy efficiency, whether that be just extending the asset's lifespan, or providing a better experience for the occupants in their buildings. And so, we're seeing this kind of broad service evolution, and I think it's setting the context for, of course, this is occurring at the same time that a lot of the innovation in technology is occurring as well. So if I think about on one axis, this service evolution, on the other axis is technology evolution and new technologies becoming available, integrated into these buildings and systems, and informing how these services are provided, how informing the ability for customers to achieve the goals and operational objectives they set out to achieve, and so on. And so, while I do think we're still relatively early on in smart and intelligent buildings, really focused on more simple point applications, basic equipment monitoring, alerts and alarms, energy usage tracking, and so on. We are kind of tiptoeing into what we call the compound application stage, where you start to put together some of those systems to create more compound value, whether that be through predictive maintenance of a system, more complete operations visibility, even getting into the ability to optimize a system, whether that be automatically or through the interpretation of data and the development of recommendations. As this evolution occurs, of course, you can start to see how these kinds of technologies and capabilities can inform more and better expanded value from these services. So we're seeing this evolution. We're not too, we're still kind of in this basic application stage, getting into more advanced things. And I know that there are many examples of these more advanced things occurring, but I'd still say they're probably relatively few and far between. In the future, I think it's pretty clear that a lot of this stuff will become very automated, and optimization of building systems around particular goals or activities will be programmed into the systems themselves. Now, it may be a while before we get there, but that's the ultimate promise of these technologies, connected systems, artificial intelligence, and so on. And I think it's pretty clear that we will get there, just a matter of time. And how long that is depends on how the ecosystem organizes to support all of that. So thinking then, putting those two dimensions together, services, the evolution of services and the evolution of technology, we start to see some, digital service opportunities come out. So this is again combining the data and insights and capabilities enabled by that technology with higher value, more integrated, more direct, more relationship driven services. So with data from these systems, you can still provide basic customer support services. Hey, I noticed your equipment isn't functioning as it should be. Maybe you should take a look at that. You can then get into much more value added services. This is where we get into field services, service lifecycle agreements. There's lifecycle optimization services here as well. The ability to take that data and actually kind of recommend and work with customers on what to do with that, and then expand all the way up into even managed services. This is where we might get to some things like equipment or system as a service, or like we'll talk about in a bit, maybe an entire building as a service. So there's still an evolution that's occurring here as well. And we'll look a little bit more at this shortly. But of course, when I have access to data, I can do a lot more thing. I can provide a much more valuable service. I understand exactly how the system is functioning for the customer, and I can direct my field service team or recommend how the customer themselves proceeds, whether that be with in relation to things like energy management and optimization, asset management and reliability, or other sorts of services there. I'll take a breath. I'm hoping this I know there's a lot of frameworks here, just trying to set up a good way to think about this and show that kind of as expected, all all of this is an evolution, really. And you can't really have digital services, of course, without the technology infrastructure in place. But you also can't have these digital services with more basic service-based business models and more traditional ways of doing things. So that'll bring us to a poll question. And Marta, I think you have to take over here. But would just like to take a quick pulse check and see of the folks that are attending the call today, is your organization providing any sort of digital service today? I think you'll be able to select multiple selections on the screen. It should be popped up in front of you now. Really just wondering kind of what services are provided and if they are digital enabled or not. If you do provide digital services that are not on the list, just select other and we'll come back to that. But interested to see if there's any sort of digital services out there today. Thank you all for voting. Some interesting things that I'm seeing. Remote equipment monitoring and diagnostics is kind of number one. I think that would be expected at this point. I think it's kind of that first step, that first stage to kind of integrating data into how companies provide services. I think that it quickly evolves into predictive maintenance and fault detection, of course, and energy management being another key one that comes out of monitoring pieces of equipment and how they use energy. And of course, it's a huge important goal and driver for customers. So great to see a lot of great to see that a lot of folks are providing these digital services today. I see that there were a couple of responses to other. Does anybody want to offer what other services that they're providing, just as an example, or worth talking through any of those? Is anybody interested in kind of describing, based on the scope of services that they provide, assuming that there's multiple folks here who have checked multiple boxes. Are these services, do they tend to be integrated? Do they build on each other? Are they a part of a single service, individual functions of a single service? Would anybody like to share?
This is David Clothier at the Grand. Um,
Hi, David.
for our building control systems, we actually just have it broken into two separate services. One is the remote equipment monitoring and site audits, and then the rest. There's another service that has the predictive maintenance and the energy management optimization, occupant space utilization, such like that. So it's kind of split up because I would say 70% of our customers they don't want the more intensive
Right.
aspects. I mean, we're mainly lighting controls unless the BAS system, but we do have some integration with it. So the BAS systems with the mechanical equipment, they have more of the predictive maintenance and the scheduled maintenance and work order systems. Whereas we're kind of light on that. We can tie into it, but that's not usually why they contact us.
Right.
So
Sure.
we offer both, but most of our customers they don't want all of it. They definitely don't want to pay for all of it. So we offer them the package that they want, and then if they want to go further, it's a separate package for the rest of it.
Yep. Makes sense. Makes sense. And I think that that packaging model works well to have. I mean, and it's somewhat similar to how services have been packaged, in the past, where you have different service levels that somebody could decide on. So you don't have to purchase the most sophisticated service package or the most expensive service package. We can still provide some more basic monitoring and support through that initial service you recommended or the service you described. So I think that's interesting. Um, Great. Well, good to see. Marta, maybe what we can do after the call as well is I can take the results and maybe replace the current poll question page with the results,
Sure.
um, so that we can use that or whatever, include that so
Yeah,
folks can have a view of that data as well.
that's a great idea.
Okay.
We also have Susan Alfano who's got her hand up. Susan, did you want to
Oh, okay.
unmute?
Sorry, I can't see that on my end.
No,
Yep.
that's okay.
Great, thank you. No, I was just going to share as well. So I represent the Canadian Fire Alarm Association. About 70% of our members are fire alarm service companies. So the fire alarm systems have been traditionally outside of the building automated management systems. So I just was going to share that really most of our business is driven by the automated compliance and certification reporting. We're
Mm,
seeing more automation there with respect to software that does reporting. We still have to be on site to do testing, but there are some more sophisticated equipment that is installed, devices that can actually self-test and report back to the panel, which is remotely monitored. And then we're also working right now. A lot of our members are trying to work with building owner operators on predictive maintenance and also upgrading the life cycle optimization is really important. What we're finding is they're letting their fire and life safety systems, let's just say, exceed their recommended life cycle, and they're repairing and band-aid fixing a lot of it. So we're looking for new opportunities to put in addressable systems and more modern systems. So I'm just sharing with you on behalf of what our members are seeing, but and to add to the conversation, that's all. Thank you.
great. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. It's an interesting example of how these technologies are being applied. Also interesting that, based on, I'm sure the regulations in place, you still have to be on site, but at least it's an easier task, and maybe in the future that'll change as there's more trust put into these kinds of technologies.
And
Right.
we've got Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Susan, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. There is a trend underway for allowing remote inspections of fire alarm systems as well. We're a long way off from that in the U.S. They've NFPA 915 is a new standard for remote inspections. It's not accepted here in Canada yet, but I predict that it probably will be at some point in the future. It's really whether or not the authorities having jurisdiction feel comfortable with it. But yes, as these systems become more sophisticated and intelligent, you'll be able to do a lot of the testing and inspection remotely. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Yeah, of course.
Harry, do we have time for two more? We have Roger Quesnell and then Raimo Rakonen. If Roger, if you want to unmute yourself.
Please.
Hi, this is Roger Quinnell with Sky Foundry. We produce SkySpark, and so which is sort of a full service energy analytics platform. And so we have we go through distribution, and what we find is that there's a variety of entry points. It might be one or more of these points, depending on who the service provider is and their capability. And then over time, even though the platform provides capabilities to do many of these things, it's really the organizations, whether it's a service provider or the end user themselves, it takes them time to be able to digest and move into other areas and expand their capabilities. Like for example, we're at the GSA, Government Service Administration, over 250 buildings. And more than a decade since they started, they're still they're adding more buildings every year, and they're adding utilizing the software in new ways. So what they're finding out, even 10 years down the road, their savings as a percent of energy on each building gets larger each subsequent year, as well as adding more buildings. So it really is dependent upon the capability of the service provider and end user to be able to manage and utilize the power of the digital building.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point, and one that we're seeing as well, where there are certain integrators and service providers in the market that seem to be further along in their understanding and use of these kinds of digital technologies to support their customers. And we think that those companies are very well positioned in the future. It also puts the onus on some of the larger OEMs to help drive some of that innovation in their networks. And it'll be interesting to see how that evolves and who can really lead the way there in that way.
This is Scott Flanagan. I just wanted to jump in just because that's that what Roger brought up was as a point of love for me, because I actually was on the GSA side, not as a contractor, not as the GSA, driving that strategy from the beginning with SkySpark and launching that across the portfolio. And you're dead on. The challenge is not the technology. The technology's there. It really is the adoption and how do they integrate it into their normal work, and how do you get people bought in and incentivized to use it correctly?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we have one more, Harry.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Raimo.
Yeah, hello. This is Raimo Rahko, and I'm speaking from Finland, so far away this evening here. I think we have Harry, you spoke about the smartness and digital systems and such things. I think there is a systematic error in the design market, so that people start working with the systems, automation systems, supervisory systems, such things, when they should be starting to work with the physical assets. So the physical assets are actually creating the base. So whatever system it is, if it is in the same context, you should be able to contextualize the data. And then when you have contextualized the data, which actually is not coming from the physical assets, but the cyber assets, the applications that are there. So if it is in context, you get also the data is in context. And once you store that in the data history or whatever it is, you can combine those much more easily than when you start putting them like separately into systems. So I think that the owners or the designers or whoever it is should start with the physical structure and then assign the applications to those systems and then you're actually all done already. So when you get data, you're all there. So if you have a room and you have lighting, you have ventilation and whatever you have, those all belong to this system, which is a room. And then,
Yes.
of course, there are utilities, which also are systems. Thank you for taking my notes.
Yes, yeah, of course. I think that's a great point. And we speak so much about separating the data from the system that it's captured in to be able to use that data in any sort of application you might want. But you always need the context that data is coming from, and that needs to be a very specific context, not something that's generalized or abstracted. So I think that is an interesting point, and we'll talk a little bit further about that a little bit later in the presentation here. All right, great discussion so far, guys. Appreciate that. I'll take a couple steps further, and then we'll have one more poll question here. So, one of the key aspects of digital services is that customer support and interaction mechanism. We wanted just to call it out because we believe it's extremely important. So whether you exactly call it some sort of network operations center, service operations center, the idea is that there's data transfer occurring from the customer site to some sort of centralized point of whether that be a kind of a control center, command center, whatever, provided by a service provider or a third party, and that's connecting that data to the ability for the service provider to actually support that customer in whatever aspect that the agreement is based on. And so this is a little bit somewhat to Raimo, what you were just describing. There's this idea that a lot of the data that is captured in buildings today is very trapped in the systems that they're captured within or for, and some of these data sources really need to be kind of opened up a bit to support some of these more integrated, more higher value digital services. There's a lot I could say about this. I think it's obviously worth some time in and of itself, but I'll move on just because of time here. We do see an evolution of digital services as well. So we kind of I was speaking to this related to the poll question, but there's a lot of software and IoT solutions out there today that are really just provided to customers as a do-it-yourself solution. So once the system is installed, the customer can do whatever they want with the data. They might use it to inform their own maintenance or energy management activities. But there's no real additional service provided by the supplier. The next step there is some actual remote monitoring, which is what we see as the most basic kind of service category. Alerts, alarms, maybe some basic analytics, evolving to more predictive analytics, advanced control optimization, that kind of thing. And eventually evolving to more outcomes-based and managed services. And whether or not, a supplier or a supplier and their customer go through this entire evolution will be a case-by-case basis, of course. But we have envisioned a future where there's services provided around particular outcomes that customers want to achieve. Is that energy efficiency? Is that sustainability more broadly? Is that system or facility resiliency? Is that overall asset management and optimization? And there's an opportunity for suppliers to provide services directly aimed at those goals and objectives. And all of that can be informed by data, but we can't just jump straight to that. There's a necessary evolution, and that's what this is trying to portray here. All right. So the second poll question, biggest challenge, or what the biggest challenges are in providing these digital services to customers today. And it's a multi-select. You could select a couple if you'd like, or select one, but just interested in some of the challenges, and we can take a couple minutes to discuss those as well. Great. Thank you. All right, so it's again, we'll put this data into the slides so that you all have it as well. Unsurprisingly, I see limited customer readiness here as the number one overall challenge. Then it looks like there's kind of a second tier of challenges around data quality, cybersecurity concerns, some internal expertise or resources. Um, this is to me the limited customer readiness again is one of the major problems that we see. So suppliers may be wanting to ready to marketing that they can provide these kinds of digital services to customers, but ultimately, if the data isn't available, if these systems aren't connected, if the technology infrastructure isn't in place in a customer site, then of course, you can't really provide those digital enabled services. I would also assume that some customers are just resistant to the services in general at this point. Maybe they do have some technology in place, but they still want to do things internally today. Maybe that will change over time, again related to some of the trends we were talking about at the beginning, having less staff or more responsibilities and maybe even tighter budgets and wanting to kind of work more directly with a supplier to support them in this way. So any comments or other reactions to this? I'm not super surprised by the results. All right, good. We can always come back if we need to. All right, so let's talk about building as a service. So this was a topic again that I said we covered in the work with ASHB last year. It was a topic that the steering committee had voted on as one to dig into and focus on. So some of the slides you'll see here are an excerpt from that part of the project with some edits and adjustments. So what we tried to dig into last year was this kind of evolution to, if we can imagine a future where all systems are connected, technology is implemented, you're collecting data from various systems. There's open collaboration around that data. What does the future look like? And so this idea of building as a service kind of rose to the surface, and really we see as kind of that step beyond more outcome-based as a service models is thinking about it not only from a system basis, but to a complete kind of building or facility basis. I'll be the first to say this is not something that's happening today. It's something that we see as a potential future in some cases, probably not all cases, and we'll get into a little bit more here in the coming slides about a definition of what this is and what we think it takes to actually do this. And then I think we'll have some time at the end to discuss kind of what's possible and what's desired and how that might impact how suppliers think about proceeding along this path. This is definitional slide. So the idea of building as a service is a concept based on the ability for an individual or group of suppliers to manage the end-to-end life cycle of a building and its systems. This includes and is informed by the definition of customer requirements and goals and the understanding that those may be different from building to building, site to site, customer to customer, industry to industry. The collection and combination of static data with dynamic and real-time data from the building, and the ability to provide services, life cycle services really, to optimize the building based on the desired outcomes and goals of those customers. So the technologies may be available today, services may be being provided today around specific systems or even specific goals. But what we're talking about is really a end-to-end kind of integration of how buildings are designed, developed, built, and operated. That requires a lot more integration, collaboration, and so on. There's a lot of text on this slide, so maybe one to take offline, but we wanted to look at it in the context of this building life cycle. So building as a service in our minds necessarily starts all the way up front in the design and build stage where the project requirements and goals and objectives are set. These end up informing, how services might be provided throughout the life cycle of the building, and what is the kind of key focus of both, the type of equipment and technology that gets installed, as well as how those services are provided. So this was kind of to what we were talking about earlier. The design build phase we think is critically important to setting buildings and customers on a track to be able to even handle those higher value services, let alone this broader building as a service. So once you have these project requirements and goals and objectives, of course, there's building information modeling. This needs to be complete and integratable with dynamic and real-time data integration. So this might be through digital twins or other sorts of asset management, asset data collection activities. And then services are provided based on various KPIs that were set at the outset. Now, this does not need to be a single supplier. I'll say that first and foremost. In fact, I think it would be pretty difficult. I think only a very small subset of suppliers might be positioned to provide these kinds of services holistically themselves. We believe that this is extremely ecosystem and collaboration driven. So it won't necessarily be, and it might even be best not to have a single service provider trying to do all of this, but instead a group of service providers coming together, bringing their expertise together to enable an end-to-end kind of building as a service solution. These are the top owner-operator priorities from the slide we looked at in the trends section. So we just grabbed the top 4 there. Tried to provide some examples of how building as a service can add value. Of course, ultimately the kind of core is the idea that I'm not looking at a building as a or even my role in a building as a single asset or a system. I'm looking at it as a set of objectives that customers want to achieve. Do they want very efficient or the least costly operations that they can have? If so, how can I provide a complete service to support them in that endeavor? Same thing with sustainability. Of course, energy efficiency and energy management is a critical aspect of sustainability, but it's not the only one, right? There's other sorts of embodied carbon emissions and carbon tracking, reporting, and all of that can occur and should occur in some cases, and consider being able to manage and optimize around that kind of goal. And so if we think about any one of these goals, this would be somewhat of an outcome as a service approach. When we start to think about multiple of these goals, that's where we start to get into more complete building as a service kinds of solutions. And so while there's values and opportunities within each of these kinds of goals, and again, these are really just examples meant to get folks thinking. As we've seen with the whole evolution from on-prem and more traditional software solutions to SaaS, this as a service model has the ability to also increase financial flexibility associated with some of these projects and upgrades and things like that, as well as mitigate potential risk. Now, that of course requires a complete evolution of business models on the part of traditionally product-focused companies. I think it's probably more easier for more service-focused companies to be able to do that. But that kind of as a service model in this context can take traditionally large CapEx projects and allow for payment of that over time, because it's no longer about the single piece of equipment or the system, but about the objective that companies are trying to achieve. So there is some of this occurring in the marketplace today. I'd say bits and pieces of this. We developed this kind of chart to show the evolution. So on this axis, we have that service level evolution. On the y-axis is the service level evolution. On the x-axis is the level of innovation and digital maturity. We are seeing some outcome as a service. There's some companies kind of tiptoeing into this space today. I see in the chat kind of there's companies today in the facilities management place that are doing a lot of this. I think that's a great example. I think those companies are very well positioned to support these kind of outcomes. But ultimately, we were kind of trying to look at those kinds of OEMs and other kind of technology suppliers and how they were approaching the space. So it's definitely worth looking at the facility companies, but just wanted to provide some examples of how OEMs and their networks were providing these kinds of solutions. So one of the most interesting things we saw in our research was this company Syncells. They market their smart building as a service offering. Who knows how far along that really is, but it is an interesting example worth taking a look at for folks. We see Johnson Controls, Schneider Electric, Calibrant, others offering energy as a service or net zero buildings as a service, and these much more outcome-driven solutions, right? We think that that's kind of a step in that direction. So again, just wanted to offer some examples. These are really just examples. If we had to put everybody's services on here, it would take us forever. The point was really just to provide some guideposts for people as they were thinking about and looking at these kinds of solutions. If there's somewhat of a future state implied here, some sort of integrated set of services and technologies, we think that there's opportunities here. There's opportunities along this evolution for companies of all shapes and sizes and suppliers of all shapes and sizes to better work with customers. And so I know we only have about 5 minutes left, but happy to open it up to questions or if folks have any reactions or want to provide examples of how they're working with customers today to work with these solutions. Happy to include those in the discussion now. And I'll just flip to this page unless folks want to flip back. Happy to do so, but have some kind of maybe some discussion questions here as well that might spark some thinking. Reactions, thoughts?
Harry, we have a question from Philemon. Where does training fit in this? Without it, failure is inevitable.
Yep. Yeah. So we think, when it gets to actual, like the scope of how companies work, suppliers work with customers, implementing new technologies, training is right up there as an important piece. We consider it as either a part of the kind of implementation or system design and implementation set of services that might be provided. And, whether that is, whether it's an OEM themselves, whether it's a kind of a software provider or the technology provider themselves, or whether it's channel partners, systems integrators, and professional service providers, we think those services are absolutely critical to getting the technology infrastructure in place to then be able to even provide those kinds of higher level value-added services beyond that initial implementation. So I think that's a great point. And applicable across all types of technologies and all types of buildings and services here as well. Any other questions? Or reactions?
We have Ramo who has his hand up. Go ahead, Ramo.
Yes, sorry to spoil your party.
Oh, good. I appreciate
it. Again, I think there's a systematic problem also here that the building is not there for that it has a purpose. and most buildings have something inside them. If it's people, it's quite easy, but then if there is manufacturing or processes, so you need to combine the two systems. You need to combine the business that is inside, which may be creating energy or temperatures or whatever, and the building. So it's not so simple that you manage the building. You have to manage also what's happening inside the building. So that needs to be taken into consideration when you're looking at the data and the applications, how they are reacting between each other.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, for sure. Completely agree. The customer kind of vertical context, the customer usage context is quite critical. And it kind of sets the stage for what types of goals and objectives they have in terms of their operations. The building is just a site. It's a place where work and life occurs. It's what's going on within it that matters the most, and that's why they're thinking about how they optimize solutions to support various use cases there. So I think that's a great point. Well, I know we're at the top of the hour here. Really appreciate everybody's time and inputs. If I know, so we'll make a couple of edits. We'll make sure to include the poll data in those slides before we send it around to everybody. And Marta, I'll reach out to you on that. If anybody has any further questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email. It's up on the screen now, and it'll be in the deck that we send as well. Always happy to continue these discussions. So really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.